Howdy, everybody. It is Friday, April 3rd. You made it through another one. And you're here with me, Captain Awesome, at tea time, 2 o'clock. I'm glad you're here. It's our last one this week. Starting to put together a plan for next week. Just so everybody is aware, my son and I are going to be taking a road trip out to a rather remote spot to do some hiking and fishing away from the maddening crowds and to be able to be outside without interacting with other people. And that's going to take us all the way to Colorado. So Monday and Tuesday, I may or may not have a presentation ready, which I'll stop for. But Wednesday for sure, I'll be coming to you probably from the banks of the Rio Grande River. So that should be pretty interesting. Yesterday, I took a quick walk on the beach of Town Neck, and it was cold and blustery and windy, and today is no different. I had indicated that maybe I was going to do a thing about snakes, but I had a lot of people chime in and wanted to know about seals. So instead, we are going to be talking about seals on Cape Cod. What's very interesting is that we only have kind of two regular year-round resident seals of Cape Cod, and we're going to talk about those in a moment. So, without further ado, off we go. Hold on. Friend, food, or foe? First thing is we have Cape Cod seals. So we have two main resident type of seals. One is a gray seal, which has been in the news a lot in the last couple of years because of their population explosion, and thus their bringing in of an animal that everybody loves to talk about, but I've got a whole section about that, so we'll talk about those in just a minute. So gray seals, they're here, harbor seals as well. And then we have kind of three visitors that may or may not come down in the winter. They're rare to see, but they're really cool, and we're going to talk just a little bit about those. So first is our kind of big visitor. The big resident is the gray seal, Heliocorus grapus atlantica. There's two species of gray seals. One is over on the other side of the world, and so our species is distinct from that species, which is why it has Atlantica on the end. These seals live to be about 30 years old. They get up to 850 pounds, though the average adult is about 700 pounds. They have a single pup every year, and the female is completely the one who takes care of that single pup. The male has nothing to do with the raising of the pup. The females will consume as much food as they can and gather blubber. They have their pups around about anywhere between September and December, and then they just kind of sit on the beach and nurse that pup. They don't go out and eat or do anything like that. I've got a couple of cool videos from some local areas. We're going to watch those. If they're not too loud, I'm going to talk over them. The first is from the Chatham Fish Pier, which is one of the easiest places to be able to go down and observe the gray seals. This is not the way they naturally eat, but of course they've been attracted to the fishing boats for the stuff that gets thrown over the side or falls over the side. Really cool animal. A couple things about it. Yep, sorry, hold on. That was a mistake. So that's a gray seal. It is has a face like, oh wait, yep. There's a face a little bit like a horse. See, they're big animals. I think that might be a harbor seal is the first one that we saw, but the two off to the side are definitely gray seals. They're gathering at the Chatham Fish Pier. They're gathering at the Chatham Fish Pier to eat those fish. A lot of tourists come and see them. Couple things about them. They have teeth that are like razors, like fish hooks, because they catch fish and they eat fish. and they don't want the fish to be able to get out of their mouths. And while seals look kind of bulky and they bounce a little bit on the ground, in the water they are amazingly agile. Nope, sorry, hold on. I'm telling you, I'm not good at this. Here we go. So these are some gray seals also off of Chatham on a little boat excursion, and I'll be quiet so that we can hear the noise that these seals make as they're out there on the bar. You can actually see them from the road in Chatham, and you can generally hear them as well. And we'll talk about why they're there in just one second, but just give it a listen. Those are people. They have this kind of haunting ooh kind of noise. They're about as intelligent as a golden retriever. Your dog may be smarter than the average gray seal. We don't know. The reason, so we can tell almost to the day when great white sharks come back to the area, because these gray seals come into Chatham Harbor and start to inhabit the sandbars that are there, and that's because those big sharks that eat them can't get into those into that area. We've had a tremendous population explosion of gray seals for a number of reasons. This is Monomoy Island, and you'll see that Monomoy Island is separated from the mainland. It's actually kind of two islands now. And so they've created the Monomoy Island National Wildlife Refuge. So seals don't like to be bothered too much. And so they have started to inhabit these islands, which are close to food, deep water, plenty of fish, and a place to have their pups, that they're not being bothered, they're not being hassled. So they're here, they're hanging out here. And because of something we call the 1972 Marine Mammal Protection Act, which made it illegal to harass, bother, touch, or kill marine mammals. We will have a discussion a little bit later about how many people think it's time to kind of cull the herd. I tend to disagree with that, and we'll talk about why in just a minute. A few years ago, I say 20 years ago, there was a population of a couple thousand gray seals. Now there's a population of about 50,000 gray seals around Cape Cod, and that number will continue to grow. If you have a teenage boy or girl and they like pizza, and you ask them if they would like to live near a place where pizza was always readily available, easy to get, and free, the answer would probably be yes. And that's a discussion we'll be having in just a few minutes as well. Close-up look at these seals. Interesting thing, I want you to notice that bright blue object that's on the beach there. That's a Mylar balloon. Okay, I have a special hate relationship with balloons. I don't have any sort of a love relationship with them because I've been all over the world in ships, and there's almost no place I've been on the ocean where I haven't been able to spend some time and see a Mylar balloon floating around out there. They're one of my scourges. I hate to see them. It's interesting that it popped up in this kind of random photo of gray seals out on Monomoy Island. So anyhow, that's kind of the gray seal. That's the one that we have a lot in the news. We'll talk a little more in detail about those guys in just a minute. And then we've got the harbor seal. Both of these seals, by the way, are true seals, pinnipeds. I've got another couple of videos about these. Harbor seals are much smaller. They live to be 30, 35 years, up to 370 pounds. That's about half the size of a gray seal. Again, they have a single pup every year. A couple of really cool videos of them swimming and interacting with people. They seem to be very curious. They seem to be very playful. They don't really bite people as far as we know. This is a harbor seal that's in California out in the kelp forest. He's in there hunting, and diver came across him, and he's just kind of swimming and checking him out. Look at those big whiskers. Those whiskers are not only for kind of smelling, but they also feel the currents and know which way animals and prey are going to be moving. Again, remember, they look chunky and fat, but just look at these guys in the water. They are completely streamlined and fast and acrobatic. They're absolutely a beautiful, beautiful animal. And here's just another example of one in an aquarium, so we get a good look. Floppy, chubby, barely seems able to move on land, but once they get into the water, just an absolute beautiful creature. They are mammals. That means they are covered by fur, even though it may look like skin. That fur is very, very dense, and it carries kind of a little layer of air that helps keep between that and the fat is what makes the seals stay warm in these really, really cold waters. Jesse, these are harbor seals. We're going to talk about harp seals in a few minutes, and as a matter of fact, in our next slide. So again, just swimming around, looking cool. I love these guys. These are a couple of pictures of harbor seals that I took. These are in Monterey, California. It turns out that harbor seals are the most common type of seal just about in the world. They're found just about everywhere. Sea lions tend to be the west coast of America. Gray seals tend to be the east coast of America or the North Atlantic part over in Europe. But harbor seals are found just about everywhere. Just the cutest things you ever saw. Here's another one, another picture that I took while I was in Monterey, California. So that's the harbor seal. And then we have three kind of occasional visitors. The first is the harp seal. This is what an adult harp seal looks like. It has that kind of coloration on its back, which was taken to look like a harp. Remember, we talked about how animals and stuff are sometimes, their common names have something to do with their color or appearance or where they're found. So this guy has a symbol, it looks like a harp on its back, so it's called a harp seal. This is the seal that they used to hunt the little babies. The babies are pure white, kind of a soft fur, and they used to go out and hunt them. It was a pretty terrible thing. I'm not putting any video or pictures of that up here because it was dreadful to see. Even as an adult, it makes me uncomfortable. That's been banned. They can't do that anymore, so we don't really need to rehash. But I will say that their numbers have been coming back. But they're a more Arctic northern seal, as these other seals are in this picture. And they're only occasional visitors. We will only see them very rarely and occasionally. Then this is a ring seal. It's really a very rare visitor to Cape Cod. He has kind of a ring around his neck, thus why it's called a ring seal. And then one that we see very occasionally, but is a really cool animal, is called a hooded seal. It's called a hooded seal because of that protuberance on top of its head. Looks like a hood. And these guys inflate a vocal sac in order to attract a mate. Really cool animal. Again, very rarely ever see them, which is why we're not spending a lot of time talking about them. So those are the main types of seals that you may encounter on the Cape. Harbor seals right now are down in Woods Hole. If you go down to Woods Hole and looked out on the rocks out in the harbor, out by the cut, you would see some harbor seals out there probably, or if you were going out to Cuttyhunker Pennakees, they're on the rocks out there. You're definitely going to see gray seals in Chatham and on the beaches along the outer Cape. All right, next, benefits of seals, right? So this is a thing we have about it. Are seals, friends or enemies? Fishermen argue about it a lot, but there's three important things that seals do for our local environment. One, they nourish the water's edge, okay? So when you have a garden and you want to grow good vegetables, you can put fish fertilizer in there or cow manure and things like that. Well, seals eat fish, so their fecal matter is full of fish material. So they actually put some fertilizing into the sand at the water's edge, and it allows these plants to grow along the water's edge that help to stabilize dunes and create a better diversity of plant life at the water's edge. That's pretty important. It's something that we don't always think about, how animals contribute nutrients to the soil, but in fact, the seals do that quite a bit. Secondly, they actually help to stabilize codfish stocks. So fishermen have this argument that seals consume a lot of fish, and that is in fact true. When you look at the numbers that an average gray seal eats about 11 pounds of fish a day, then you multiply that over a year. In fact, they actually consume more fish than the Massachusetts fishing fleet caught last year. But one of the fish that they primarily eat is a spiny dogfish. And the spiny dogfish is actually a bigger predator of cod stocks than the seals are. So by the seals consuming the spiny dogfish, they are keeping the spiny dogfish from eating even more codfish, which is the real lifeblood of the fishing industry around here. Though to be honest, the spiny dogfish is actually a big part of the fishery. If you've been to Europe and you've eaten fish and chips, that is what you're eating, is a dogfish, a type of shark. We catch them here. Another big catch they bring into the Chatham Fish Pier, and then they get shipped off to Europe to get turned into fish and chips. Lastly, the seals are an excellent ecosystem indicator. Ecosystems work kind of from the bottom up. You've got the plankton, and then you've got the plants, and then you've got the animals that eat those, and the animals that eat those. The apex predators are what indicate that we're having a healthy ecosystem recovering or in place. So seals are one of those apex predators. And we're going to talk about why they actually attract the apex predator in just a minute. Okay? There they are in the group of predators in there. That includes big fish and salmon and groupers, killer whales, which are the largest member of the dolphin family, sharks, and whales. And the pinnipeds are right in there with them. Okay? So, here's a gray seal. We already saw this guy. We said their average weight is about 700 pounds. They have a 55% fat content. I already did the math for you. That means they have 385 pounds of fat. Per animal, 385 pounds of fat. That's 1,347,500 calories per seal meal. If you ate all the fat on a seal, that's how many calories you would get. That's the equivalent of eating 5,243 Big Macs. Can you imagine that, right? The only animal on Cape Cod that even comes close to that weight and fat content is my ex-mother-in-law. So all this energy tied up into a gray seal. Huge amounts of energy. So what wants that energy? What wants to take advantage of that energy? The great white shark. One meal will supply a great white shark with enough energy to not have to eat again for a couple of weeks or up to a month. They have a specialized digestive system. So we have talked about the idea that these sharks are a bad thing. The reason the sharks are here is because the seal populations have rebounded. The seal populations have rebounded because we've given them a kind of a quiet place to be, and we've allowed fish stocks to return. So all of these things have led to an ecosystem that is more balanced. I would argue that when the ecosystem in Yellowstone was able to handle wolves again, that was a big deal. It was the front page of National Geographic. It was in the New York Times. We were restoring wolves to Yellowstone. We had created the ecosystem now could sustain these apex predators. It's the same thing in the marine environment off of Cape Cod. Did somebody get attacked by a shark and get killed by a shark? Yes. I have a whole nother shark discussion about why that happened. I would simply say this. If you dressed up like a sick elk around a herd of around a pack of wolves and they attacked you, people would go, well, what the heck are you dressing up like a sick elk around a pack of wolves for? Same thing is happening here. Again, that presentation is called Great Whites on the Rise. It's on the YouTube channel. Please check it out for more in-depth information about why sharks are here and what they are, why they're here and the seals that they're eating. So the seals are, in fact, food, not for us, but for sharks. And then the other thing that's also happened is we've had some killer whales, which are a predator of great white sharks, moving in as well. So now we've got the apex of the apex predators, which means that our ecosystem is maybe finally recovering to where we want it to be. There he is. Look at that guy. Look at that. Look at those teeth. Whew. Something, isn't it? Lastly, is the seal the fisherman's enemy? So, Massachusetts harvested 78,880 tons of fish in 2018. That's the reported catch to mass fisheries. I don't know if that counts bycatch or not. But when we do the math for the number of seals, they eat about an equivalent amount of fish. So fishermen do kind of have this argument that the seals are interrupting their catch. I would simply say that when the colonists first arrived, and up until relatively modern times, there were millions and millions and millions of seals on the beach. Millions. And the fishing was still better than anybody had ever seen. I would argue that the problem is not the seals, which are a natural part of the ecosystem and help keep everything in balance, but people who go out with trawlers. The largest trawler in the area can go out and catch about 40 tons of fish in a 24-hour period. This is all the commercial fish, all the fish caught by commercial fishermen in Massachusetts. These large other trawlers are from other countries, so arguably that number of fish is much bigger that's actually caught in the waters off of New England. I would argue that seals have a smaller impact. And again, we talked about how the spiny dogfish is a big predator of codfish, and they control the spiny dogfish. I think the bottom line is we need to learn how to interact and work better with the seals. The answer is not to kill them. There are people who want to go back to killing them and destroying them, and then we would be right back to square one with the ecosystem. Personally, I think that we need to slow down the fishing. In World War II, we stopped fishing because we had German submarines that were out there sinking ships. And after 3 or 4 years of nobody fishing, they went out and they were astounded at how quickly the fish stocks had rebounded. It doesn't take very long. We should start looking at kind of new fisheries managements where everything can be equal. We're going to see whales coming back in. We're going to see seals coming back in. We're going to see sharks coming back in. This is all really, really cool stuff from a conservation point of view. So that is my general talk about seals. They're a pretty amazing animal. The pups drink milk from the mothers. They haul out on the beaches. You can see them pretty much all over the Cape, especially in the wintertime. In the summer, they tend to scatter a little bit. Yeah. So I hope you found that interesting. Again, I've got a YouTube page up and running, Captain Awesome. All these presentations and hikes are being put up there. Please follow my Instagram at Cape Cod Explorer. And I hope to see you guys next week, where I'll be broadcasting from the road and then from the southern Colorado, northern New Mexico area. Okay, you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Have a good one.